beer is an industry like no other, because we're more than just an industry. We're a family.
Malt was founded with beer in hand to simply unite people who love craft beer.
You brewers are the lifeblood of Malt, so we want to say that we're here for you, no matter what. Cheers.
The Malt team, along with our supply partners, have been working round the clock to make sure we can provide you with the very best ingredients for top-notch brews.
Because that's what family is for, to be there through the tough times and through the good.
Some of our best memories have been made over a few pints at the pub.
I can't wait to catch up over a cold one once this is over, but we're still enjoying your beers until then.
So from the hop farms in the Pacific Northwest,
from the rolling barley fields in Germany,
and the Great Scottish Highlands here in the UK.
And the barley paddocks down under.
From the crags of Colorado.
And from your local maltsters in Australia, we'd like to say,
we're here so you can keep making your best beer. Cheers.
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 Slanjava.
cheers.
cheers!
Cheers.
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 Hello everyone out there. Welcome to the Malt Virtual Good Beer Week Trade Hub. My name is Luke Robertson. I am the content producer for the Independent Brewers Association and Good Beer Week as well. And I'm really excited to present this panel with some great guests. I'm not going to introduce them all. I'm going to throw to Richard Adamson from Young Henrys and the IBA, who will look after introducing everyone. Richard, how are you going?
Yes, not too bad. Coming from the Young Henrys Zoom room, very classy version of the background that you might have seen with the whole Zoom thing. But here we are. We've got a great panel today. So as part of my role at the Independent Brewers Association, I head up the People Project. So we're looking at training and education, wellbeing, and diversity. And this is a special wellbeing edition, special ISO wellbeing edition as we're coming out of some of the lockdowns across the country. We've got on the panel, we've got Jarrod White from Mind Room. And Jarrod, I don't know if you want to give everybody just a little bit of your background and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist at the Mind Room. I've been working there for a few years, and I do a lot of individual work, one-to-one, but also one of the best things about the Mind Room and the work we do there is that we do a lot of community outreach. So we're doing lots of workshops on things like how to navigate change, how to feel your emotions, how to be able to respond to anxiety around climate change. So it's really quite varied. And so it's a real pleasure to kind of be here and talk to this panel today.
Okay, great. And we've got James Penny of Gage Roads, who's also on the People Project. James, you want to just have a quick introduction as well?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. My role here at Gage Roads is the People Sustainability and Technology Manager. So with this isolation and the COVID sort of lockdown, I've had a pretty heavy involvement from the health and safety, getting everybody set up by technology at home. And then in WA, we're starting to bring people back. So been fairly heavily involved with all that and interacting with a lot of our staff around the country regarding this, and also on the people panel. And I have a background in health and exercise science from UWA. So from a wellbeing point of view, it's something I've been, engaged with or at least passionate about for quite a while.
Fantastic. And also fantastic inclusion to the panel is Gavin Cotter. Glenn is a community ambassador for RUOK. Blaine.
Yes. Hi, everybody, and thank you for the chance. My name's Glenn. I'm a community ambassador for RUOK based in the Bega Valley on the New South Wales far south coast. I'm also a lived experience mental health peer worker and work with people coming out of suicidal ideation or suicide presentations. At the moment, we are working where we can with people in the region who have not only dealing now with the COVID isolation issues, but also just coming out of basically a 2-month campaign bushfire incident. And for a lot of our businesses down here, they literally only reopened for a week or 10 days and then had to close again. So we've got a lot of issues just starting to really bubble down here now with anxiety, with concerns about what's happening with their jobs. Primarily the bulk of our workforce is in hospitality is casual and part-time. So a lot of our staff in the area have lost not only one job, but 2 or 3 jobs. So it's a real challenge in the area, and we're doing everything we can to try and reconnect an area as soon as we can.
And Glenn, you've had a previous life in hospitality as well?
Yes, I have. I've got 25 years experience in hospitality with 4- and 5-star hotels. I'm a qualified cellarman back in the old days of doing a course at Ride TAFE, back when cellarman was considered to be a profession. And I've had a lot of experience as food and beverage manager or food and beverage operations. And in the 90s, I was fortunate enough to work with both Heineken and Cooper's Breweries as a regional area manager based in Canberra and the Riverina and Snowfields.
Fantastic. And Bruce, the body magician, also got a background in hospitality as well. So Bruce, you want to give a background in yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My area of expertise these days is relaxation. And I got to this path by a combination of yoga, meditation, martial arts, and massage. So that's kind of the umbrella through which I view the world. And I spent 18 years as a fine dining waiter. So yeah, really looking forward to sharing some practical relaxation mindset tips with the audience today that you can really use for yourself. I want to make it really practical and give you some things that you can walk away with today.
Great. Thanks all for joining us. It's a real privilege to have you all on the panel. Jarrod, I might start with you. What sort of issues have you been seeing? How have we been coping with the isolation, and what should we be mindful of as brewery owners and looking out for our peers?
Well, I think it's been really interesting to kind of watch how people have progressed through the isolation period. You know, it's kind of felt almost like a week-to-week kind of phenomenon that we see change happening all the time in the way that people are responding. I think initially there's kind of also a little bit of shock and maybe almost a little bit of panic that we saw very early on, and we saw that in many different spaces. But then people kind of became, somewhat accepting of the situation because there wasn't actually a chance to do anything different. And I think one of the hard things there was dealing with a lot of the emotions that can arise from loss. We lost a lot of things coming into isolation. We lost some jobs, we lost identities, and dealing with that grief was one of the most challenging things. I think the other thing that was really interesting to notice is that in a way as well, some people actually started to feel okay in isolation because there was this ability to be able to avoid things without it actually seeming like avoidance, because everyone was doing it. So we didn't have to go out there. We didn't have to socialize. We didn't have to work too hard. Even though we sometimes felt the need to be productive, we could also avoid that without feeling the guilt. Now I think that isolation is ending. The challenge is recognizing that people are going to have to start confronting things again because everyone's moving back out there. So that avoidance that we once had, which didn't seem like avoidance, actually stares us in the face. And we might start thinking about all of these shoulds, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, I need to be doing this. And it can put a lot of pressure on ourselves and can make us feel a lot of pressure that can in turn create a lot of anxiety. So I think one of the things coming out of this space that is very important to be mindful of in this space is being aware of the pressure that people might put on themselves and allowing people to come back in at their own time, at their own pace, and letting people know that it's okay to come back in slowly.
I guess one point too is that things won't be back to the same way as it was before, will it? So there will be adjustment for everybody.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And some of the best articles that I was reading when isolation was happening was just sort of coming to terms with the fact that the world is going to be different post this isolation period. And that often people were thinking, okay, well, if I can, sit through this isolation, then I can come out and we'll just go back to the way things were. But the trouble, just like I was talking about early on with this grief and loss, was that actually we had to kind of at times let go of the way things were and to make space for the way things are going to be. And that's one of the hardest challenges, because we can feel very stuck in the identity that we had, or the work that we were doing, the purpose that we had. And if we don't allow for that grief at some point, or those feelings of loss at some point, it can be very hard to make space for these new priorities. So just like you're saying, in turn, make space for this new world that we're going to experience. There will be some similarities, but there'll also be differences, and we just want to be open to them.
So in many ways, it's managing that change. So it's going to be recognizing that things aren't the same, and as you say, grieving, and then giving space to okay, well, this is the new reality. How do we deal with that?
That's a great question, and a big question, and a tough question. I always like to think of it like this: when it comes to change, we think of the opposite of change is acceptance, and very often when we're not happy with something, or when we are confronted by change, we try and change things really quickly and change things really fast. And so I think there's two approaches that we need to be mindful of when we are confronted by change, because changing things really quickly and really fast means that we often get ourselves into a panic, or we start to feel anxious, or we even don't get anything done because we're just putting too much pressure on ourselves. So those two approaches are this. First comes acceptance. First comes acceptance of the new space. And that means that we actually don't have to change anything right now. We have to see that the change is there, but we don't have to do anything different. We just have to accept that this space is the way it is and start with that. But the second thing is start small, really, really, really small, and just focus on one simple change that you're going to deal with, or one simple change that you're going to make in order to confront this new world that we're experiencing. Otherwise, we can take on way too much and try and do too much, and it just becomes too overwhelming. So rather than solving it all, just let's start with one small thing.
Okay, so really talking about baby steps. So it's going to be how you work on a particular task, or one aspect of your job. I guess there's also the whole interpersonal relationships as well, because I know here that coming into Young Henry's is all about hanging out with all the great people that work at this company, and that's been something I've really missed during this time. And not everyone's going to come back at the same pace either, so it's not going to be back to the way the company was, unfortunately. Any sort of advice around that aspect?
Yeah, again, I think one of the maybe the positive things about that I've seen in isolation is that people really had some opportunity to kind of learn about themselves a little bit more, because there's not as much stimulus going on. And I think that's really going to be critical when coming out into this new space when it comes to socializing. I think it's very easy to see everyone else socializing, or everyone else is going back out there, so I should. And should's one of the worst words that we can possibly have that we hold on to. When we say should, what we're really saying is, what do I want to do, or what do I not want to do? And in that way, if we're in an environment and we're feeling like this is too much, much, but I should stay. We're really pushing ourselves to stay when we actually don't want to. And we need to be able to listen to that. We need to be able to listen to what our bodies are telling us. And I think, Bruce might talk about some of the strategies that we have in terms of being able to relax our bodies, but we need to be able to listen to them first. If our bodies are becoming a little bit heightened, if our bodies are telling us that, okay, this is too much, or we're feeling exhausted, or we're feeling drained because it is totally new again, and we are throwing ourselves into a world that right now is foreign, then we need to be able to listen to that. Because if we keep pushing past it because we should, then we end up feeling obviously anxious, or we end up feeling actually like we can't do anything. So we need to be able to listen to our bodies and be able to say, okay, right now I need to step out, and then I'll come back in tomorrow, or something like that.
Right, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Jarrod. James, can you maybe give us a little insight in terms of what Gage Roads has been doing and what you've been looking at in terms of your team?
Yeah, definitely. I'm guessing it was a pretty quick change. Looking at COVID and everything was kind of developing, and we pretty much just drew the line and we sent everybody to work from home, which, some people were geared up to do, some people weren't. So we had a fairly big change that we had to manage through. And about a week or two after everybody went home, you come back to the office and have a look, and it was all the monitors and computers and all that had disappeared. So we completely changed the way we were working. And then with that, came with a few challenges. So having people outside the office, not being able to communicate properly, trying to keep people connected was the first sort of hurdle that we had to get over. So we were lucky we already had some video conferencing stuff in place. So we really, leveraged that sort of platform. But also a lot of people used to getting up, coming into the office for 8 o'clock, 8:30, being able to access people very readily and easily. So resetting that routine was a bit of a challenge for our teams. And then making people feel, connected and social in our workplace is, and the same as yours, Richard, probably a very social sort of workplace. So trying to keep that theme moving throughout the workplace while we're working from home. So, building in catch-ups in the morning, in the afternoons, end of week beers was a big part of trying to keep everybody motivated and engaged in what we were doing. The technology aspect, obviously really important. We were quite lucky that we already had working from home set up. So we didn't have a long period of struggle there. But having that extra load was a real frustration for a lot of people, and, trying to manage those, things that you're used to, your abilities to do things quickly, was a little bit hampered with, 100 people all of a sudden working from home on this VPN network, which was a bit of a challenge. So that was kind of, working from home. And we're in WA, we're a little bit further along the line than most. And over the last week, we've been planning on returning people back to work, which happened on Monday. Now, a lot of positive reception for that. I think a lot of people were getting frustrated and annoyed with the working from home situation. I think long periods without your work colleagues, ideas bouncing around the office sort of floor was kind of happening people's work enjoyment and their productivity. So a lot of people were really positive about coming back to work. But obviously we had to manage that transition coming back. Our offices aren't that big, that large to hold the sort of amount of people that we need to kind of abide by the 1 person per 4 square metre rule. We have a lot of entries to our building as well. So hand hygiene, signage, a lot of this, trying to procure a lot of this stuff in this environment was really difficult as well. So trying to get us COVID ready to return to the office was quite difficult. But with that, we rolled out some training programs and we managed to start slowly trickling people back to the office. So we've had to limit the amount of people who can go into meeting rooms, limit the amount of people who can go into offices. Again, very lucky that we've got a warehouse with extra office space, so we've split the teams up. So there's still some isolation there. And it's still difficult to try and really connect all the teams back together where most of the teams used to sit side by side. A couple of the other things that we've had to do, our operations continued during this time. So there was a feeling of conflict for some of those guys, where a lot of people working from home and other people required to come into the production facility. So we had to separate the teams. We had to put on an extra shift. So we went from a 3 to a 4. And that was really to, in case there was an infection, to try and spread, ensure that we didn't lose a whole bunch of people. So electronic handovers, so they weren't seeing teams at handover. And we had specific entries and exits into our building so people weren't crossing over. So there was a lot of changes that we had to implement really, really quickly, which had to be massaged through for some of our teams.
That's a really good insight, I think, in terms of how we might see ourselves transition out of it too as we start opening up. How did the staff take all these changes? Were they was there much management that required around that? And how did you go about it?
I think the general environment nationally meant people were more accepting of some big changes that were coming. So, changes to work hours, changes to work conditions and all that. People were pleased that we tried to keep as many jobs as possible through this time. So a lot of people were happy that we were taking these measures and still engaging our staff and keeping them working and trying to keep their day-to-day life as normal as possible. So some of the challenges that we did get was, obviously trying to meet production needs, spreading it out over long periods of time. We've just come off the back of a major project as well. So we had people from Germany on site. We've had people from Victoria, from South Australia, and all flying in and out, having to go back on repatriated flights. So, there were some major changes, and in whole, everyone took the change really, really well. I think just the general environment around what was going on and such major changes happening to their lives outside of work meant that they're a bit more accepting and able to take on some of these changes.
I imagine everyone's learned a lot. It's a crazy way to do this, to have it all forced upon you. But do you feel that maybe now the company is more agile than it's ever been?
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. I don't think we've ever seen changes implemented so quickly and been taken on board. I was in Sydney probably 2 months ago, and all of a sudden we had all these policies. We had doors off hinges. We've had, hygiene stations around the place, and it happened in 24 hours, 48 hours. Like, it happened very, very quickly. And all the team kind of forgot about, their individual packages of work, and everyone chipped in to kind of get these changes and get these solutions through, which was very good, all the way through to our contractors from an IT perspective. And I feel like everyone's been very resilient during this time. Everyone's rallied around, everyone's been very compassionate about what's been going on. And, a lot of people just picking up the phone, ringing each other and doing safe drop-ins to check on the operations staff to make sure that they're not feeling too isolated when there's, not that support network around them from management, finance, sales and marketing. So a lot of people trying to do their bit, as well as trying to abide by all the guidelines that have been released to us.
I think that's an excellent time to bring Glenn into the conversation then with Are You OK? Because Are You OK is all about asking that question. And for maybe people that aren't necessarily comfortable doing that, Glenn, what does Are You OK say in terms of starting that conversation?
I think it's a very good point that you bring up, Richard. We try and look after our mates and keep an eye on who's doing what, but we do get concerned sometimes if we see someone that's not travelling as well as we think they should, or you got a mate that's not his usual ratbag larrikin self, that while you might want to ask him if he's all right, there's still people who are concerned that if I ask you, are you okay, and you actually tell me you're not, what do I do then? There's that fear that if they tell me they're not, what do I do from there? How do I help them? Can I help them? And it's a really simple message, and it's one that worked for me personally. I know at my darkest point, I had one friend that continually badgered me to ask me if I was okay, and then finally one day I had to swallow the man pride and actually look at myself and admit that I wasn't okay. And his response to that was very simple, that, mate, that's okay, let's have a cup of coffee and have a chat. He didn't try and give me any great clinical or psychological advice. He just asked me if I was all right, had I spoken to anybody, and how I could look towards finding some help myself. And I think that's the message. I know that's the message that RUOK does put out there, is that it's a hard question to ask, but it doesn't have to be. If there's someone there that you're not sure of, ask them, are they okay? Listen to them when they answer you, and listen without any judgment. Encourage them to go and talk to either some family members or their GP. Point them towards helping themselves. Don't try and solve their problem for them, and then just check in with them on a regular basis. See if they're okay. See if they've gone about finding a little bit of help. Again, ask them how they're doing, and just catch up. And it's a simple message, and it's a basic message amongst mates. But we're still wary of asking our friends, are they okay? And it's a way of reconnecting our communities and getting back in touch with each other, which is a challenge at this point in time. And there's definitely challenges out there. I know in our region down the far south coast, we've come off a fairly devastating bushfire period where we were in the throes of reconnecting our community and staging community events to reconnect the community and get it out to support each other. So many businesses lost 90-95% of revenue over that period, and we're just starting to open their doors and be thankful that the Easter period and the holiday periods were coming up, only to have lockdown hit them basically within 10 days of reopening and then closing again. So in one breath, we were pulling a community back together, and the next minute we were being told to isolate that community, and it just made it difficult for a lot of people to sit down and come to grips with. 1 minute they were looking for support, and the next minute they were pushing support away. So it's hard to check in on your friends when they're isolating. So we've just got to find different ways to check in on our mates, and be that, give them a ring, send them a text message. The Zoom technology and the online technology now is something that all of a sudden we've embraced quite passionately, and I've learned that it is actually not a bad way to do things. Helps us.
I think before this time, if someone gave you a FaceTime, you knew it was a pocket call. Whereas now you've got to look at and go, no, they're probably actually doing this on purpose, and they actually want to see the face and have a chat. That's quite different. I think that message too, Glenn, about you don't have to have the answers. It's really about listening and then pointing people in the right direction is really important. Because I know that's something people are afraid of in terms of asking the question. It's probably worth pointing out too at this point that Medicare does provide consultancy for healthcare professionals. I think it's up to 10 consultations free. So that's if that's a worry, it's covered under our healthcare system as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of help out there, and a lot of it's very simply started just by talking to your GP, and he can steer you in the direction of what's available in your area, because it's all a little bit different in different areas and different states. But it's relatively simple to reach out and find what helps around. It's just a matter of letting yourself ask for help. It's not weak to ask for help. As a matter of fact, it's a sign of strength to ask for help. So, and there's a lot of people out there that just want someone to ask them, are they okay? Just so as they know that someone actually cares.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Glenn. Bruce, I might bring you in now, and maybe I think we've talked about in the past that you've got to quite often put the oxygen mask on yourself before you go and assist others. So a little bit of self-care tips might be a good time to talk about those.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. And it's beautiful to be able to ask somebody else if you're okay. But for me, one of the first steps in doing that is actually taking a few moments and checking in with yourself. And like Jarrod was saying, like things are really dynamic, and there's a lot of now feelings of obligation or shoulds or what do I do and how quickly. And as that anxiety or overwhelm, all of those emotions start coming to the surface, it's like how to be able to be with that. And one of the first steps for me is actually to just pause for long enough to sit with whatever's there for long enough to be able to acknowledge it. And in doing so, sometimes that can be enough for it to start to dissipate or clarity to start to come around. Who do I need to talk to, or what support do I need for myself? So let's dive in straight into one of my favorite techniques. This is a little breathing technique that I developed after spending some time with former members of the Russian Special Forces and some incredibly capable freedivers. The two things that these guys have in common is that breathing is essential to both of those occupations. Like if you're not breathing, you're dying. So it's a great place to start, is with actually just finding yourself sitting down and eyes open or closed. You can just start to observe your breath. No thoughts about needing to make your breathing bigger or smaller. Just let yourself actually observe your breathing, kind of the same way that if you're standing on a beach and the waves rolling in, touching your feet and then rolling back out, as the waves roll in and roll out, you have no thoughts about needing to make the waves bigger or smaller, just perfectly content to observe that. Yeah. But then we have this phenomenal capacity to choose to breathe consciously. So the invitation for all of you is to find an inhalation for your count of 3. Just inhale for a count of 3. And hold those 2 beautiful full lungs of air for your count of 12. See how deeply you can relax into the space between that inhale and your exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And a smooth exhale for 6. And just feel, even just from that one breath, kind of just check in with yourself, feel into how you feel now in comparison to how you felt before. If anyone listening wants to make comments, then by all means, do so, or questions, by all means do so. So that's breath 1. Yeah. So that's the practice breath. We're going to string 3 breaths together and see where we end up on the other side of that. So the invitation again, just to observe your breathing, feel into the experience of being you. Whatever's going on is going on. If rent's due and payroll's due and you don't know when you're going back to work, that's all still going on, but you're here. So the invitation is to find an inhale for a count of 3. Hold that breath for your count of 12. Smooth exhale 6. And then we can flow from there straight into a slightly larger inhale. Inhale for a count of 4 this time. Going to be opening up the lungs a little bit more. And this time, relax, retain your count of 16. See how deeply you can soften your body into this space, like actually physically relax. With 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Smooth exhale for 8. We're going to go one more breath because we can. This time, inhaling for a count of 5. relax, retain your count of 20. Really drop into this space. It's almost like pressing Control Alt Delete. Yeah, all the windows shut down. You just get to be still for a minute, just chill out, be with whatever sensations and experiences are there. And then whenever you're ready, it's a smooth exhale for 10. Boom. And just feel into how you feel within yourself now after those 3 conscious breaths in comparison to how you felt before. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just like something new might have opened up. There's access to a new way of being. So yeah, by all means, anyone who wants to share either on the panel or in the comments, what if anything are you aware of from that?
Well, I certainly feel more relaxed after doing that. It's a technique that I use if I'm ever feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and probably happening a bit more than ever now. I guess, Jarrod, I guess any observations or comments on after listening to the rest of the panel talk? Anything you'd like to kind of chime in on?
I guess, one of the things that I've been thinking about as everyone's been talking is, and we kind of touched on it when we first spoke, just the change that is happening, and how difficult that can be to confront. And there are so many changes going on at once. And so it sounds like one of the biggest hurdles at this point is being able to deal with all of those changes and deal with all of the individuals dealing with those changes, because everyone's unique. Everyone's going to be going through it in their own way. And just like there's no right or wrong way to feel at the end of that breathing exercise, I think it's important that we all kind of are aware of and at least accept that idea that there's no right or wrong way to go about coming back out into the real world. There's no right or wrong way to go about getting back to work. There's no right or wrong way to go about actually being able to sit with a mate and have a conversation. As long as you're there present with the person, have that conversation in whatever way you two do. So just being aware that everyone's an individual and everyone goes about it in their own way, and that it's okay to go about it in the way that you want to go about it or need to go about it for yourself. And I guess just being able to ask it from the heads of the organizations all the way down to the bottom, just kind of what's going on for each person and being able to adapt to those changes, because we've seen how resilient everyone is at this time. And going back out there, that doesn't need to change. We can still be as resilient. We just have to be able to adapt to the individuals.
Great, thanks for that. James, what are you looking forward to on the back end of this? Anything in particular?
From a work perspective or a personal perspective, Richard?
Could be as simple as having a beer at the football. That's kind of something that I'm looking forward to. So,
I think sport returning is obviously up there, definitely. From a work perspective, it'd be great to get the whole team back together. You start to miss people when you're sitting at home for long periods of time. And also continuing some of these habits that we've brought in. So the working from home, I think, has lost a little bit of its stigma, like you're not doing anything at home. I think people are realizing that you can be productive and you can find better ways of working when you're away from the office for a period of time. So I think people will be a bit more accepting of requests of people wanting to work from home for a day or two a week, which I think is going to be a great change, because I think, one, you do need that office environment, you do need that contact point, but there are some tasks and some jobs that you need to do, which you do need a bit of quiet time, isolation, to kind of get through some of those sort of bigger planning tasks. And I'm guessing another one from a personal point of view is I've picked up a lot of new hobbies and exercises. Now that you can't access your gym, or you can't do your regular routine, and definitely I've always been an outside person, but I'm experiencing going outside a lot more, especially in WA. The weather's been fantastic, and I think a lot of people are rediscovering being outdoors and taking in probably some of the more important things when life has kind of slowed down a little bit. It's kind of what I'm looking forward to, keeping some of those habits going and exercising outside.
And Bruce, that's probably a good thing to bring you in on as well, in terms of just getting out there and experiencing more of that, and being more in touch with yourself, I guess, while you do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think. Yeah, sorry, Bruce.
No, go, James.
I was just going to say, like, people, I think, are realizing that you don't need to spend $50 or $100 a week on exercise and health. You can go buy fresh fruit and veg, and you can go spend time outside and go for a run or a walk. And there's a lot of free and me personally, I think there's better ways of exercising outdoors and taking time to yourself.
Sorry, Bruce, go.
No, what was the question, Richard?
I was just saying, I think it's a good point though. We can go and experience like nature and be a bit more in touch with ourselves, and take things slowly as we come back, and maybe do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much available to us that restores us when we get outside, when we're getting fresh air, when we're moving our bodies, when we're, like James is saying, eating good food and drinking good water and a couple of good beers. All of that stuff can be like just so restoring. Having invite some mates over and have a fire in the backyard and have a beer is, I think, for men particularly, like being able to sit around the fire is a really great way to open up a space where people can feel safe to share things. And I think, really gratitude at the end of the day, like whatever you're dealing with, if you can shift your focus from what the problems are and what the challenges are and the intensity of the obstacles, and every so often just bring your mind back to and become aware of the things that you're grateful for. Whether it's maybe, you've got a fridge full of food, there's a whole lot of people in the world who would be really grateful just to have that, and to like keep that in perspective. I love to go through a little checklist of just like checking with myself and ask, what are 3 things that I'm grateful for in this moment? Can be connecting with you guys, or the sunlight, or whatever. So just being grateful of 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that I'm grateful for about my work, and 3 things I'm grateful for about myself. If I go through that little checklist, I always feel different in myself after that. And then it just, it creates a new frame that I can then bring to looking at the challenges and the problems from a more positive personal perspective.
Fantastic. And Glenn, any final words for the panel?
I think I agree with everybody wholeheartedly. We've just got to ease back into sort of reconnection, and we don't all have to run out tomorrow and hug everybody that's around us. We're all going to get back into it slowly. And I'm actually finding some of my friends are enjoying isolation, where they're actually realising that they're finding themselves a little bit more than what they were. We're all keen motorcyclists down here, and we've always said that we've been missing riding with our mates, and riding in ourselves is therapy, but riding with your mates is group therapy. And we're keen just to get out and go for a ride and just end up at a pub somewhere and sit around a beer garden and talk rubbish just for the sake of being around our friends. And it's just taking our time, getting back out, touching base with each other, and just, again, as Bruce said, appreciate that we are in a fortunate area. At the end of the day, we've come out of it pretty well. And if we just take our time and get back out there and appreciate our mates around us and support our local businesses, support our local breweries, and especially in the regional areas, get out and support our local breweries, and just appreciate that we're doing all right. Check in on our mates, and also, as Bruce said, check in on yourself first. Don't rush out and feel that we have to, we need to, we should do it. If we want to get out and re-establish ourselves, slowly do it. But at the end of the day, you know, it's all right to ask if we're okay, and it's okay not to be okay every day. We are going to have ups and downs, but, you know, it's a simple case of checking in on your mates, and, you know, a conversation can save a life. I know it primarily saved mine, and it's a very simple message. So just check in, ask your mates if they're all right, and just sit and have a listen. And, you know, if someone's not good, you don't need the answers. Just sit with them and be there. Share a beer with them, share a coffee with them, share a joke with them. Let's all just look after each other.
Fantastic. Look, thank you so much to the panelists. Amazing group of people to have to talk on this topic. Thank you all for giving your time. And if anyone out there needs more resources, we'll put some links up as well, and links to the different organisations that have been represented at the same time. There's a lot of resources out there that we've put on the IBA website as well. And I'd also like to thank David Cryer and Cryer Malt for putting the Trade Hub on in the ISO mode on the virtual side. Luke, do we have any questions, or have we covered everything pretty well?
No, we're all covered off, and I just want to reiterate what you've said there, Richard. Thanks for the panel and everyone for joining us on Cryer Malt. We do have another session starting in 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to finish this up now and get ready for the other one. I've put links to the Mind Room, where Jarrod is a practitioner, RUOK, as well as Bruce's Body Magician website into the chat window there. The IBA website, iba.org.au, has all those resources. Members can log in and check all that out. But for now, thanks everyone for joining in. It's been a really interesting chat to watch from the sidelines. A link to the next chat we've got coming up about parenting and pregnancy in the beer world, which is a discussion that is not had at all, and I'm really excited that we can present this on the back of a mental health one as well. So 2 really exciting discussions. Thank you so much to the panel for joining us, and yeah, hope to see everyone in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.